Hi everyone, my name is Tori, this is Novel Life, and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my April wrap-up to share with you. As always, I will have my April mid-month wrap-up linked in the description box below, as well as in the cards, so you can check out all the books that I read in the first half of April. I'm going to be talking about the 13 books that I read in the last half of April. For a breakdown of all of my statistics, I had 5 audiobooks, 4 ebooks, and 4 physical books. For a breakdown of genre and star rating, I had 7 contemporary romances, 3 dark romances, 1 novella, 1 fantasy romance, and 1 romantic suspense. For star rating, I had 1 5-star read, 3 4.5 stars, 4 4 stars, 2 3.5 stars, and 3 3-star reads. Now for breakdown for the whole month, because I like to do that as well, I did read a total of 24 books this month. I've slowed down my reading a little bit, but I'm not mad about that. I'm kind of digesting books a little bit differently, and like slowing down and really reading books that I think I'm actually gonna love, not just books that someone mentioned once and I just want to pick it up. I'm reading books that I really honestly think that I'm going to love. So, like I said, I had 24 books, 5 were physical books, 10 were ebooks, and 9 were audiobooks. For a breakdown of genre, I had 13 contemporary romances, 6 dark romances, 2 fantasy romances, 2 novellas, and 1 romantic suspense. I had 2 5-star reads, 6 4.5-star reads, 9 4-star reads, 3 3.5 stars, and 4 3 stars. So, most of my reading has been pretty good books that I would love to recommend to you guys, which I'm really, really happy about. All that being said, I'm going to dive into the books that I read in the last half of April, and I'm going to give you my thoughts and my star rating. So, the first one that I read, I actually listened to, but that is Echoes of You by Catherine Cowles. So this book, if you're watching this on Wednesday, just came out yesterday on May 2nd. This is the second book in the Lost and Found series. This is one of my favorite covers I think that she ever has done, just because of the pink and the purple. I just think it's just very springy, and it just makes for a good cover. I love it. Now, Maddie and Nash's story, I mean, in the true Catherine Cowles way, there is this second chance kind of aspect. It's childhood friends to lovers. I wouldn't say it's second chance because I really didn't have a chance. It's more like childhood friends to lovers. They've known each other for a while. They've been friends since they were children. Our female character, Maddie, she goes to Atlanta with her boyfriend, and there's trigger warnings for abusive relationship. She comes back home after realizing what is going on with her, I guess you could say ex-boyfriend. She just leaves him, and that's when she goes back home. She meets Nash again, and they have this romance that's kind of like that they should have had when they were younger but never had the chance to. And I thought it was really, really beautiful. If you're looking for literally a quote of who did this book's for you. Literally, that quote is in here, and I can't wait to reread it. I was hoping to reread it and annotate, but I did not before release day, so I'm hoping to do that in some point in May, because I do love doing that with Catherine Cowles books, just because I like them. But while this is small town, I would say that this series is more romantic suspense. I'm not mad about it, just romantic suspense isn't my favorite thing. But if anyone can make me like a book with romantic suspense in it, it is Catherine Cowles. So I'm excited for everyone to read this one and see what Maddie and Nash is about, because I really, really love their story. And if I didn't say, I gave this book 4.5 stars. I really did love it. I'm just not a big romantic suspense girl, so always at the end, there's always something that comes up, and yeah. I mean, it's still a really good book. I would highly recommend it. The next book I read was Secrets We Hide by Becca Steele. So this is the second book in the 4 series by Becca Steele. I gave this one 3 stars. This is not my favorite in the series. I would say the 4th book is my favorite so far. Even though I read that book first, I don't know, that was Brother's Best Friend. I also don't know if these characters are for me. Like, if they're my cup of tea, if that makes sense. So the first 3 books in this series follow the same couple. They follow Winter and Caden. And the 4th book and the 5th book and the 6th book, because there's 3 other books that I want to get to, that all follows 3 different couples. So you get like a different story with those books, but this is like continuously dragging out. And I don't know if their story really needed to be dragged out in 3 books. I have held off on reading the 3rd book just because I don't know if I'm really going to like it. And I don't want to continue putting myself through these books when I don't know if I'm going to really, really enjoy their story. So I may just skip to the 5th and 6th book and, come back to book 3 at some point to finish out their story. But because I already read the 4th book, I kind of know that they're already together. It's just their story. They start out in the first book as step siblings. I can't really tell you anything that happens in this book because it's going to be a spoiler. But I mean, I do like Becca Steele's writing. I just I don't know, their connection is dragged out too much for me. So 3 stars. Then I did a reread for my Patreon. My patrons picked a book for me to reread, and I filmed an exclusive reading vlog for them. So if you join, it's always in my link to join my Patreon is always in the description box below. But I reread Heartless by Elsie Silver. This is one of my favorite books of 2022, and I'm not mad at it. I had such a fun time reading this book. I'm not gonna lie. I had the best time. I love Willa and Cade. Like, I love the fierceness they have for other people, but also for each other and their little family, especially Luke. Like, he is such an intricate part of the story, and I love how she wrote him in there, because sometimes kids are just put into books and then like pushed to the side because the focus is on the romance of the 2 main characters. But this book was so fucking good, guys. I loved it. And I am not mad that my patrons picked this one. I had a good time. I think there's like 40 minutes or something like that of me reading this and just gushing about this book because I loved it that much. The next book I read was The Setup and the Substitute by Jiffy Kate. So Jiffy Kate is a duo. They write different kind of contemporary romances, but this series is their New Orleans Revelers. I'm probably not pronouncing that right. Whatever, it's fine. This is actually interesting because I feel like if you like Heartless, you would love this book. So I read this book right after reading Heartless, and I noticed there was some similarities that I'm like, okay, I'm picking up on these vibes. I did give this book 4 stars. And the reason why I say that is because our female character comes into the main male character's life. He's a single dad. He has 2 kids, and he's looking for a nanny. And our female character is actually one of his kids' substitute teachers for the school, but it's only for X amount of time until the other teacher like comes back from medical leave. And she is hired. Well, he reaches out and was like, hey, I need a nanny and my kids really love you right off the bat. Can you please become their nanny? The season's starting. He's on the baseball team in New Orleans, so he's traveling and stuff. He's like, I really need someone to look out for my kids and someone I can trust. So she stays with them, and it is super sweet because they have these like phone calls and FaceTimes. Of course, he's doing that for the kids, but he also sees glimpses of her. And it was just a really sweet romance that I actually really, really loved this one. So far, this is my favorite in the series. I have 1 more book to read. I think they're coming out with another book sometime this year in this series, but I cannot wait to read the next one. I think that's the 3rd one. I could be totally wrong. I'm probably reading these all out of order, but highly recommend this one if you love Heartless. So good. The next book I read was Sweet Addiction by J. Daniels. So I read this book for an exclusive video on my Patreon where I read a book and then I either cook a dish that's inspired by the book or I bake. And in this case, because our female character in this book owns a bakery, I baked some banana muffins. I changed the format a little bit. It was more of a voiceover where I talk about this book, but I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars. It was okay. It wasn't my favorite. I wanted more baking in the book. I also hated the miscommunication at the end because I'm like, they didn't talk for like 2 or 3 months. I'm like, you bitches are grown adults and you didn't just speak to each other. Like, you could have just spoken to each other. And 75 pages, 50 pages of this book didn't even have to be in there. But I did like how they meet. They meet in a wedding. They have like a little one-night stand. She thinks, a couple days later, her friend tells her, oh, he's married. I can't believe that you did that with a married man. And she goes to his place of work and slaps the shit out of him. And he's like, what the fuck was that for? She's like, you're married. And he's like, I'm not married. Her friend was like, oops, wrong person. So it was just a really funny time. I found myself laughing out loud at parts. So for my first J. Daniels book, I had a good time with it. I will pick up more. I like their writing. The 3rd act miscommunication breakup thing, not my cup of tea. The next book I read was Weak Side by S.J. Silvis. This one, I love this book. I gave it 4.5 stars. So this is a fake dating romance, also a roommate's romance, also a hockey romance, also a reformed playboy. Our female character is a ballet dancer. There is a lot going on, and I absolutely loved all of it. So one thing I love with hockey romances is that I love when there's actually a lot of hockey in the fucking book, right? You can't really call it a hockey romance if there's no hockey in it. But I will say that there was actually a decent amount of things going on. They were gearing up for the season, for a hockey season. It starts off with our female character. They take her name wrong. They like switch her name so they think that she's a boy. And they put her in a dorm room with another guy. And that guy just so happens to be this really big player, like playboy on the hockey team. And so they're forced together, forced to be roommates. They're forced to work things out and stuff like that because there's literally nowhere else they can go. I'm going to say one thing. The shower scene, I about lost my ever-loving mind when I was reading that scene because I was like, the stakes were so high. I was like, there's so much going on. He was trying to like hide her because she like had an injury, you know, from dancing, and he had the team, I guess you can say like medical person, come look at it. They said, oh, ice bath. So she took an ice bath, and then to warm her up, he put her in the shower and left her alone. Well, it's about practice time. So like the coach was coming in and other teammates were coming in, and he was like, oh shit, I need to like hide her. So he gets naked and stands in front because he's this big hockey guy and she's tiny. Like she's a tiny ballerina. When I tell you the tension in that shower, I had to like stop reading for a second. I was like, this is making me anxious. It was so good, y'all. I loved this book. Like it had everything that I wanted, and I just had the best time reading it. So highly suggest that one. Highly suggest that one. The next one I have is The Coldest Winter by Brittany Cherry. This is our cover to cover book club pick for, what month is it? April. I almost said May. We're in May now, but for April. And I will say I gave this book 3 stars. And the more that I talk about it, the more I want to lower my rating, but I'm going to leave it at 3 stars. It's fine. We do have a whole live show where we talk about this book and I really dive into my thoughts. So I will say that this is forbidden. It's a student teacher. He is 19-year-old in high school and she is like 21, and she is student teaching. She's still in school, but she's student teaching at the high school, and they hook up at a college party one night. That's how the book starts, and then you find out that she is his student teacher. And I will say that this had a lot of things thrown into it that I personally did not like. There was a disability representation, chronic illness representation in this book that it was basically used as a plot device, and I personally do not like that, where you have an author that is putting a chronic illness or a disability into the book only for it to be turned around and used in a way where it's, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be with me because I have this and I don't want to bring you down in life, or whatever the case may be. You know what I mean? They use that kind of excuse. That's not something I want to read about. So it just didn't hit with me. I also didn't feel like the characters had a connection. Our main male character, he has a lot of mommy issues. His mother passed away when he was younger. And I really felt like our female character was not really there as a partner. She was stepping into the role of a mother for him. And I just didn't feel that they had a romantic, I mean, like they did have a romantic connection, but I didn't feel like as much as some of her other books. So I felt like this one was kind of a letdown for me with Brittany Cherry and some of her other writing, some of her other books. So yeah, with all that being said, 3 stars. The next book I read was Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez, and I absolutely loved this book. Absolutely adored it. 4.5 stars. And I'm like, I gave this 4.5 stars, and I gave Weekside 4.5 stars, but I think honestly I might change my ratings to 5 stars because I've been more picky about books, and I think I might keep this one at 4.5 stars because the miscommunication trope at the end really bugged me because I was like, just one of those things, just talk it out. Just talk it out. Also, the way that the female character acted at the beginning of the book, she was mean to our main male character, and I am extremely possessive over him. Like, no one can say anything wrong about him. Jacob was absolute perfection. He has anxiety, and it comes out so much in this book. There's trigger warnings for like on-page panic attacks. He talks about it a lot, and I related to that so much because it comes up in such different ways. And there's also all this talk of chronic illness. So I read this in a spot for me where I was ready to read it. If I wasn't, it would have been triggering to me. So just be wary of that. I would throw it out there that they have those things, those triggers, but I will say I love this book. I love this more than Part of Your World, even though I rated them about the same. Comparatively, this one's my favorite. I am so glad I bought this book. Zachary Weber narrated this for the main male character. I think he did an amazing job, portraying what Jacob was struggling with his anxiety, and beautiful story. Beautiful story. Absolutely loved it. Highly recommend it. Everyone needs to read it this spring and summer because it is perfection. Now, the next book I read was Ashes in the Star, Cursed King. Why can I never say that name? I don't know why I can never say that name, but this is the second book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. So I filmed a 48-hour reading vlog over the weekend for the last 2 days of the month. So most of the books I'm going to talk about from here on out, I all read in the last 2 days of the month, 2.5 days. That vlog should be up for my patrons already. But I will say that comparatively to the first book, this one was not a big letdown, but it was a little bit of a letdown. I felt like she had a lot to live up with the first book. And, coming to the conclusion of Rain and Oria's story, there was a lot happening and there was a lot we needed answers for, right? And I felt like, I said this in my vlog, the first 50% of this book felt very, very slow. I felt like it dragged out a little bit too much. It was more of her just telling us all of these information and everything like that. And I really wanted to get into the nitty gritty of the characters. And, you know, I wanted to see Rain and how much more guilt he felt. Like, I feel like it was more like surface level. And I wanted to see Araya with her grief that she had of losing her father at the end of the last book. So it was just all of these things that I felt like I wasn't getting. But then you had this like breakthrough moment about 50% of the way through the book, and it kind of was like up to par with everything that the first book was. So I go back and forth. So like the first half of the book was like a 3-star read. The second half was more of 5 stars. So I landed on a 4-star. That's where my rating comes from. Would I recommend the duet, them two together? Their story, absolutely. Loved it. Love seeing the characters again. Love seeing what they all go through. Love Araya. She is such a strong like female character, and it's something I really enjoy reading. But I just felt a little let down with that first half of the book because I didn't feel that with the first book at all. So it was okay. The next book I read was a novella. It's Bite the Ice by Ellie Cotton. It is tiny. It's literally it took me 30 minutes to read this, and I gave it 4 stars. It was just cute to see these characters again because you see them in Break the Ice by Ellie Cotton. And yeah, I just wanted to read Ella and Connor's story. The next book I read for that 48-hour readathon was My Dark Romeo by LJ Shin and Parker S. Huntington. So I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be 100% honest. I lowered my expectations so much when I was like 3 chapters in because I heard some people saying it's not that great. I did see people saying it was like 5-star read, and I was like, really? Are you sure this is a 5-star read? Like, I don't really know. But there were some other people saying that it was like a 1 or 2-star read. So I lowered my expectations a lot. And I think that's why I rated it 4 stars. I think that's why I had a really good time with it. And I was like, okay. And I was really, really entertained. I stayed entertained the whole fucking time. I think that Romeo is such a possessive, like he's the epitome of obsessive, possessive, and jealous. Literally, he's the epitome of that. And I think our female character, she was so, like, she could get under his skin so fucking easily. And it created this such an entertaining book that, like, it was hard for me to stop reading. Like, honestly, it was really hard for me to stop reading. There was some questionable sexy scenes where I was like, I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if that's possible. But, I mean, to each his own, you know what I mean? Like, whatever. It was fun to read about. But I was like, instead of it being like, ooh, sexy time, it was more like, sexy time? Like, I was confused. But anyway, it was a good time. It was a good read. 4-star read. 4 stars. The next book I read was Twisted by Emily McIntyre, and I gave this one 3.5 stars. And I said this in my reading vlog, so if you become a patron, it's always in the description box, you can see that vlog. But this one is very similar to My Dark Romeo in the way that they're forced to be married. It's more of like marriage of convenience, arranged marriage type thing. She kind of is put into this particular, like, I wouldn't say kept or captive, but she's like put into this box where it's like, you can't do this, you can only do this. And I don't know, I felt like reading My Dark Romeo and this one back to back, I prefer My Dark Romeo over this one. But I feel like if I would have read this first, it would have been a more like 4-star read. So this is more of a reimagining of like Jasmine and Jafar and stuff like that, and very much enemies to lovers. I felt bored. There was times where I would go in and out of the story where I felt bored, as when I was reading My Dark Romeo, I felt like I was really intrigued by the story and it kept my attention the whole time. So yeah, 3.5 stars to this one. And the last book that I read for April was Queried Sick by Dallas Smith. So if you're watching this on Wednesday, this book just came out yesterday. It's a debut author. It's a debut novel, and I gave it 3 stars. So I did have an arc of this, and I really I struggle, okay? I struggle with books that put in their description that, oh, if you're fans of Always Only You by Chloe Lees and Casey McQuiston, you're going to love this book. So this is an MM romance, and there is some, talk about COVID. They most of the time throughout this book is by emails and or Skype like messages because they're working together, but because it's lockdown, it like starts at the beginning of 2020 because they're in lockdown, they have to stay home and stuff like that. And one of the main male characters deals with anxiety, one deals with rheumatoid arthritis, which if you know me, I have that, but also Only Always You by Chloe Lees. Frankie has RA. And I think to put that label in your description is setting a standard. Do you know what I mean? Like that is setting a really high standard for me. And because this is set where most of the characters are chatting over like I am or anything like that. Who says I am? Oh my God. Who says I am anymore? Who am I? Like DMs or Skype or anything like that. I felt like it was more just labels that the author threw in there. Now this character who has RA, I think the representation was okay because we really didn't get to see all that much. There was like little moments where he talks about being stiff, which I'm like, yeah, okay, that's fine. But it wasn't like a deep dive, you know what I mean? Like Always Only You is. And then for the Casey McQuiston, I love Casey McQuiston, and I think that she writes same-sex romances really, really well. But I felt like I said, those are really big labels. And I think I had my hopes up and they were kind of let down because I read the blurb. I hope that makes sense. But like, it was okay. I just didn't feel like there was emotions all that much because it was such, like, it was through emails where it was very impersonal because it's supposed to be professional, but also through DMs and IMs and stuff like that. And you, like, halfway through the book, you really get to start seeing the emotions. So it felt like very insta-lovey because they were just like, click, I like you. Well, you don't really get to see that during IMs or IMs. I keep saying that. Their messages and stuff like that. You don't really get to see what they're feeling in between those messages. So I felt like there was this like a little disconnect. Now, for a debut novel, I think it's pretty good. I hope this author continues to write very diverse in the chronic illness and disability world. That would be really cool to have another author that does that because not many authors do that. But I also felt like his anxiety, the other main male character, his anxiety was not very much there. Like he was having a panic attack and that was it. It was like, you're having a panic attack. You've had anxiety. This is what it's in. This is what you've had your whole life. And I'm like, where did this come from? So it felt like it came out of nowhere. But with all that being said, it was okay. So I gave it 3 stars. There was, when you put those 2 labels in my head, those are just, all of those books were 5-star reads for me. Both Casey McQuiston's that I read, Always Only You, 5-star reads. And as someone who has that, I want the Always Only You level of representation of RA in that book, in your book, if you're going to put that label on it. And I felt like it wasn't like that. So whether that's the fault of the author for putting that in the book, in the blurb, I would say, I don't know, but you get people's hopes up and it doesn't always live up to that. So I'll say that. But that's all the books that I read in the second half of April. You can let me know what your favorite book was of April. Also drop me some cloud emojis. I don't know, because it's overcast today. Drop me some cloud emojis. And yeah, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe for more content from me. As always, I hope you're living a novel life and I will see you in my next one. Bye guys.